Daizaba, thank you for joining us here at the weekly highlights of Arakan. 4-year-old girl raped in Mrauk-U. Regime bombs Thandwe for 2 consecutive days. Regime declares martial law in Arakan Army-held townships. Regime to operate Yangon-Kyaukphyu-Manaung flights. IDPs in Arakan State worry for future as shelter crisis persists. ULA Health Department urges vigilance over Measles outbreak near Bangladesh border. Fighting has continued across Arakan State for more than 2 years as the Arakan Army presses its offensives. From April 20th to 26th of 2026, covering the conflict and other regional news, we'll be bringing you key developments regarding the situation in Arakan. 4-year-old girl raped in Mrauk-U. A 4-year-old girl from Bombardments village in Arakan State's Mrauk-U township was reportedly raped by a 60-year-old man. On April 22nd, the suspect, identified as Uthenkajo, 60, lured the young girl while she was walking in the village and raped her at his home. The victim is currently receiving medical treatment while the Department of Law Enforcement and Public Security, DLEPS, under the United League of Arakan, has detained the suspect for investigation. Cases of statutory rape are on the rise in areas controlled by the Arakan Army. On March 16th, a 13-year-old boy raped a 3-year-old girl in Altuka village, Maundo Township, and attempted to hide the body. In that case, the victim's family expressed deep dissatisfaction after the perpetrator's mother, who was allegedly an accomplice, was released. Locals have called on authorities to take effective action against perpetrators, stating that such crimes are unacceptable to the entire community. The Arakan Army's Department of Law Enforcement and Public Security, DLEPS, has previously announced that under Section 376, 3rd of the Penal Code, anyone who rapes a girl under the age of 12 in Arakan State will be sentenced to either life imprisonment or 20 years in prison, along with fines. Residents pointed out that while statutory rape incidents are increasing in areas controlled by the Arakan Army, legal action and enforcement remain significantly weak. Regime bombs Thandwe for 2 consecutive days. The military regime carried out further airstrikes on Thandwe Township in Arakan State on April 24th using jet fighters and Y-12 aircraft, according to local residents. Following an attack on Uplee Town in Thandwe Township by 3 jet fighters on April 23rd, the regime deployed 6 jet fighters and Y-12 aircraft to conduct additional bombings starting around 1 p.m. on April 24th. A local man in Thandwe said, "Daily aerial bombardments on towns and villages across Arakan State continue even after former junta chief Mrauk-U issued a peace invitation to ethnic armed organizations and People's Defense Forces. The military regime has invited ethnic armed organizations and People's Defense Forces to engage in peace talks within a 100-day time frame effective from April 20th. However, despite this invitation, airstrikes have intensified across the country, leading to a daily rise in civilian casualties. Political analysts suggest that the regime's peace overtures may lack sincerity and could likely be a strategic move to buy time for military consolidation. Currently, the military group has declared martial law in over 60 townships and is planning to escalate its offensives. In Arakan State, the regime continues its efforts to regain control of areas held by the Arakan Army by utilizing ground, air, and naval forces. Regime declares martial law in Arakan Army-held townships. Myanmar's military regime has declared a state of emergency and imposed martial law in 9 regions and states across the country, including 14 townships in Arakan State currently controlled by the Arakan Army and Palawa Township in Chin State, under Section 4112A of the 2008 Constitution, claiming the move is necessary to suppress armed insurgency and effectively carry out regional stability and rule of law. The order covers 60 townships across Arakan, Kachin, Gayan, Gaya, Chin, and Shan states, as well as Sagaing, Magwe, and Mandalay regions. The martial law declaration was signed on April 23rd by self-proclaimed President Mrauk-U and Military Chief General Ye Wen-U. The order is set to remain in effect for 90 days from the date of issuance. Furthermore, under Section 413B of the Constitution, the regime stated that martial law was declared for 90 days in these emergency areas to restore administration, community peace, and the rule of law to their original states. The announcement specified that administrative and judicial duties in these townships have been conferred upon the new Commander-in-Chief of Defense Services. He may exercise these powers personally or delegate them to any appropriate military authority. Local residents are increasingly concerned that the regime, which has been conducting continuous airstrikes across Arakan State in recent days, will launch even more intense aerial attacks following this state of emergency declaration. Regime to operate Yangon-Kyaukphyu-Manaung flights. The regime announced that flights to Kyaukphyu and Manaung, island towns it still controls in Arakan State, will begin operating on April 24th. According to the announcement, the flight schedule will include 3 flights per week, operating every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The Ministry of Transport and officials from Myanmar National Airlines arranged the flight operations after completing inspections at Mrauk-U Airport, aiming to expand air travel services. State-owned Myanmar National Airlines said it is planning to expand flight routes starting April 24th to assist travel to towns where transportation is currently difficult. Under the current flight plan, aircraft capable of carrying more than 100 passengers will be used, and ticket sales agents report that prices are currently set at 630,000 jets per ticket. Myanmar's self-appointed President Min Aung Hlaing recently spoke about expanding flight routes to the 3 remaining towns in Arakan State, and those plans are now being implemented. Critics say the expansion of flights to Mrauk-U is not primarily intended for public convenience, but is instead aimed at supporting the regime's military logistics and communications. During the 17th anniversary of the founding of Arakan Army on April 10th, the chief of the Arakan Army, Major General Thandwe, said, "We will complete the capture of the entire Arakan State before 2027. While there have been no battles in Mrauk-U Township yet, the regime has built strong fortifications with naval forces, personnel, and weaponry. Local residents continue to face hardships in their livelihoods and health, along with travel restrictions imposed by the regime." IDPs in Arakan State worry for future as shelter crisis persists. Many internally displaced persons in conflict-affected Arakan State are expressing deep concern for their future as they continue to live without secure shelter. The displaced are currently staying in makeshift tents along roadsides, in open paddy fields, and near forested areas. In addition to struggling to meet basic needs such as food and clothing, they are also exposed to harsh weather conditions. With no clear timeline for returning home and monsoon season approaching, IDPs fear worsening hardship if they are unable to secure weather-resistant shelter in time. More than 3,000 IDPs from Rakhine and bombardment townships are also reportedly without secure housing and lack the resources to build shelters on their own. The shortage of humanitarian assistance, combined with limited job opportunities and rising commodity prices, has made it extremely difficult for displaced people to arrange shelter independently. According to aid workers, about 30,000 residents from more than 100 villages in Kyaukphyu have fled to Rakhine and other townships due to ongoing fighting and are in urgent need of shelter. Although local social aid groups are providing assistance, the scale of displacement has made it difficult to meet the growing demand for food and shelter. Nearly 600,000 people have been displaced in Arakan State since fighting resumed in November 2023, and many remain unable to return home. Since the beginning of the conflict, blockades imposed by the regime limited international assistance, and the constrained capacity of local aid groups have further worsened the hardships faced by displaced communities. ULA Health Department urges vigilance over measles outbreak near Bangladesh border. The Department of Health under the United League of Arakan has issued an advisory urging the Arakanese public to remain highly vigilant following a measles outbreak in neighboring Bangladesh, which borders Arakan State. The outbreak in Bangladesh has been ongoing for more than a week, with fatalities reported among infected patients. The Department of Health has cautioned residents in border areas such as Maungdaw, Buthidaung, Rakhine, Paukdaw, and Palawa to take extra precautions. Measles is an airborne disease that spreads through coughing and sneezing. Health officials emphasize that the virus can infect people of all ages, with children who have not yet been vaccinated at greater risk. Symptoms include high fever, coughing, a runny nose, red eyes, and watery eyes. 3 to 4 days after the onset of fever, red rashes appear across the body, and white spots may develop inside the mouth. The Department of Health has urged the public to get vaccinated, avoid contact with infected or suspected cases, and refrain from visiting crowded places. Officials also advise washing hands with soap before meals, wearing masks when going outdoors, and seeking immediate medical attention at the nearest hospital, clinic, or rural health center if symptoms appear. The public has also been encouraged to report any suspected measles cases in their communities to the relevant health authorities without delay. According to a report by AFP, more than 600 measles cases were recorded in Bangladesh in March, prompting emergency screenings nationwide. This was a selection of weekly highlights from Arakan State. Stay tuned for this program every Tuesday. May all people of Arakan and the world stay healthy and safe.